Coming up, a rallying call on Ukraine as Volodymyr Zelenskyy accuses Europe of avoiding action. This is after he meets Donald Trump in Davos. We'll be live in Moscow as the first trilateral talks with Kyiv and Washington are announced. The US president launches his board of peace, but with Vladimir Putin among those signing up, the UK opts out. We'll be asking why Sir Keir Starmer is snubbing the invitation. Also tonight, anger in Crowborough as asylum seekers are moved into a military training camp near the East Sussex town. We'll be hearing from opponents putting together a legal challenge to Home Office plans that will eventually see more than 500 migrants housed at the site. Outrage, indignation and exasperation in Tunbridge Wells as residents fight for a reliable supply of water in their taps. The two British actors up for Oscars for their roles in Sinners, the vampire horror getting a record 16 nominations. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. Good evening. Officials from Kyiv, Moscow and Washington are set to meet this weekend in the first trilateral talks aimed at ending the war in Ukraine. It comes after Donald Trump met Volodymyr Zelenskyy in Davos, with the US president saying there would soon be a settlement to end the four-year conflict. Addressing world leaders following that meeting, the Ukrainian president accused Kyiv's European allies of avoiding action. Sky's Paul Kelso is in Davos and sent us our first report tonight.
Volodymyr Zelenskyy arrived in Davos on the last full day of a meeting dominated by talk of conflict, in which his was the forgotten war. A last-minute date to meet with Donald Trump came on the day the American president launched his pet project, a diplomatic club for compliant states that began as a plan to end the war in Gaza, the Board of Peace. The more urgent question in Kyiv is President Trump bored with Ukraine.
What is your plan for Ukraine? What will you say to Volodymyr Zelenskyy today?
Ukraine, as you know, today I meet with the president and we'll be discussing it. We're meeting with President Putin today or tomorrow, and some people are going over, and I think they're getting close. A lot of people are being killed. We got to get it done. If we don't get that done, it would be a disgrace.
A one-hour meeting with President Zelenskyy was Trump's final engagement. He left the Ukrainian leader, for whom US security guarantees are vital, to chide European allies.
President Trump led an operation in Venezuela and Maduro was arrested, and there were different opinions about it, but the fact remains Maduro is on trial in New York. Sorry, but Putin is not on trial. Europe looks lost trying to convince the US president to change. But he will not change. President Trump loves who he is, and he says he loves Europe, but he will not listen to this kind of Europe.
Volodymyr Zelenskyy has just finished speaking in the hall behind me, and he sounded like a man who has run out of patience, and perhaps little wonder. While European leaders here have been fixated on Greenland and Donald Trump, Ukraine has felt like an afterthought. Do you feel Ukraine has been ignored this week in Davos?
It's not ignored. It's understandable that in Davos there have been a lot of different questions, challenges, you know, but it's just forget about the war, you will not solve the problem.
Ukrainian business leaders have been in Davos trying to raise support for a country enduring its fourth winter of war and the coldest in decades, amid blackouts and heating failure.
We cannot wait for outcome of this process. We need immediate reaction, and the only reaction is to force Russians to stop attacking energy infrastructure.
What is the message to President Trump?
It's very clear, not just to President Trump, to every president of so-called free world. Unity is very important. Divide and conquer. That's the rule to destroy someone was and still and going to be, and that's what Putin actually does.
The day ended with Trump's envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner heading to meet Vladimir Putin in Moscow, as Ukrainian, Russian and US delegations prepare to meet in the UAE for the first trilateral talks.
Thank you very much, everybody.
After days of disruption and division, a deal apparently closer, but far from done. Paul Kelso, Sky News in Davos.
Let's bring in our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett. And Ivor, the US envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner travelling to Moscow tonight ahead of those first round of talks in the UAE. And it seems that Putin is keen to meet them.
Yeah, that's right. This meeting with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner we knew about. That was always going to happen after Davos. They've just landed. It's Steve Witkoff's 7th visit to Russia. Now, there is a lot of optimism from the US side that a deal is close. Steve Witkoff, before leaving Davos, said that there's only one issue outstanding. He said that's territory. Russia wants all of the Donbass, remember, but Ukraine is unwilling to give up the parts that they still hold, the parts that Russia hasn't yet seized. He says that he's hopeful of progress. He says we have some very good ideas on that. But even if that is the case, I don't think territory is the only issue. I think there's still quite a big gap between the two sides on security guarantees. Yes, the Ukrainian side believe they've agreed things on their side with the US and Britain and France. Of course, Britain and France saying they'll be willing to provide troops in order to if a peace deal is agreed in order to prevent another Russian attack. But Russia still maintains it cannot agree to Western forces being on the ground. So I think there's still some divergence on that. So I'm not sure if a peace deal is as close as the US seems to believe. But either way, they are also talking about another meeting tomorrow as well. More talks there. The first potentially trilateral meeting involving the Russians, Ukrainians and the Americans. That's due to take place in Abu Dhabi, we understand, tomorrow and Saturday. But we still haven't had confirmation of that from Moscow. Ukraine say they are sending their top team of negotiators, including Kirill Budanov, who is Zelenskyy's chief of staff. So they're sending a very senior delegation, suggesting that it is a significant development. But as I say, no confirmation from Moscow, and I don't think we will hear anything from them until after this meeting in the Kremlin late tonight between the President Vladimir Putin and Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. I think they'll hold on until the last moment to confirm whether or not they'll be attending. But look, even if it is not as senior a delegation as the Ukrainians are sending, if there is this trilateral meeting, I think that would be seen by Ukraine and by the US as a step in the right direction.
Ivor, thank you. Ivor Bennett with the latest there from Moscow. Now, the first asylum seekers have been moved into a former military site in East Sussex, despite months of protests and local unrest about the plan. 27 men have arrived at the Crowborough training camp, which will eventually be scaled up to house more than 500 migrants. Sky's Amelia Harper reports.
These huts used to house our military personnel, but not anymore. Crowborough Army Camp in East Sussex is now home to 27 single male asylum seekers. These green barriers will eventually contain over 500 people over several months while their asylum claims are processed. The public can't go in, but it hasn't stopped them from speaking out.
The drive to the army camp is along this tree line here, and so our garden borders it all the way down.
Phil and Christine live on the outskirts of the barracks.
I am very emotional about it. I don't know what's going through my head at the moment because I don't know what's going to happen, and I think it's the fear of the unknown more than anything.
This is the sort of community where, you know, you didn't always lock your door and you didn't always lock your cars up and what have you. And we would live much of our lives outside, doing outside activities, and those outside activities are all bordering the camp where there's going to be a lot of undocumented men wandering around.
2 streets! 4 streets! Discontent here has been brewing since last year. Information, the protesters say, has been hard to come by.
A lot of people in the town that I've spoken to are really quite worried about this. There's a lot of anxiety in the town with people because we just don't know what is ahead of us.
Responding to their concerns, the Home Office says these barracks have 24/7 security and strict signing in and out procedures for the men that are now living here. They've said that they've been subjected to health and policing checks before they've arrived. Inside, they have basic accommodation. Beds line the rooms with access to communal areas. Using army camps like this one is part of the government's strategy to stop the use of asylum hotels by 2029.
We need a longer-term solution for how we house migrants, but I also know that if we get people out of hotels, that will have a deterrent effect on the people that are trying to get into our country. So I will work with communities as much as possible. I get where they're coming from, but closing asylum hotels is one of my top priorities.
But it's left the people living near this base asking whether they are a priority. For them, it's hotels over homes. Amelia Harper, Sky News.
Well, for more on this, we're joined by Rachel Millward, who is the Deputy Leader of the Wealdon District Council. Good of you to join us this evening. Thank you so much. Just hearing concerns there from those that live in and around Crowborough about what is unfolding, what has started today, around 27 migrants being housed. It's planned to go up to 500. How are you feeling about it this evening?
Yeah, I mean, I think our biggest sense today is just it's been appalling how mismanaged this whole thing has been by the Home Office. You know, the lack of information for the community. They haven't even told us as a council what's going on. And really what that means is, of course, there's a lot of anxiety and concern. It's a huge, a change, a very different thing going to happen in that area. And with no information comes misinformation. There's a vacuum, and it's been filled with all kinds of myths and misinformation, and the fears inevitably ratchet up and really get a stronger grip on the community. And that in itself is, a threat to our safety. And we kind of see other people coming in and whipping up some of those fears, which obviously isn't the right thing. What we need is a sense of calm. In fact, Crowborough is a place where we've welcomed all kinds of refugees over the years. We took in a huge number of Ukrainian refugees. There were Afghan refugees at this camp before. And so we just need as much information as possible. We needed the Home Office to be fronting that so that we can have the best possible response to it. The council has been against these plans all the way through. We've brought the concerns of the community, and we're also saying this doesn't work for asylum seekers either. It's very clear, and all NGOs that work with migrants would agree that large-scale camps like this are not the answer. They don't save money. They're actually no cheaper than hotels. They still cost about £100 a night. So it's really a kind of performative cruelty from Labour. What we need is the backlog of asylum seekers who are waiting to be processed. We need that cut down, and we need that through safe and legal routes. So people who are fleeing, whether they're fleeing war or genocide or persecution, they need to be able to come to this country safely and, quickly and be granted asylum rather than have no legal route. Because like in Afghanistan, you used to have a way of coming to the UK safely. Now you don't. You just have to come on a small boat, and then you have to apply for asylum when you get here, and then we get this backlog. So we just think the whole thing is the wrong approach, and it is just shocking. It's just absolutely shocking as a council how the Home Office has failed to communicate with the community, and I understand that, because then people don't feel listened to, they don't feel heard.
Well, I think everyone watching you this evening will agree that what is in place at the moment is a complete mess. The government say that they're trying to sort it out. You mentioned legal routes there. There are none in existence at the moment. The Home Office saying that those migrants who will be housed at the camp near where you live will await processing. We know there's a backlog, but they will be processed when they're there, and decisions will be made. But just talk to me about this lack of communication. Obviously, you say your community has welcomed in Ukrainian refugees, Afghan refugees through legal routes. They've been housed there with no problem in the community. Why have you not been getting any information? And talk to me about the little you have got from the Home Office in the build-up to this.
Yeah, I mean, the community only heard that the Home Office was thinking about this because it was leaked. There was never a moment when this was actually formally announced. So that was, back last October. Now that's appalling. That erodes trust. And for this to work for communities and for asylum seekers, it needs to work on trust and good relationships between the authorities and the community. So that hasn't been able to happen. As a planning authority, so with a district council, in an ordinary situation, we would have the planning authority, we'd have to authorise the change of use. In this situation, it's Crown land, it's Ministry of Defence land. So effectively, the government can give itself the permission to do all of that. We don't have any of our usual powers to bring into play here. But again, that's been there's been so much misinformation around that because the Home Office haven't been clear about it. But we met with the Minister, Alex Norris, even last week, and he told us then they still hadn't made a decision and they couldn't tell us when they would make a decision. And then, sure enough, the asylum seekers gradually come in overnight. Last night, when we didn't know, we knew in the evening that they'd made the decision, but he said it would be happening sooner rather than later. Within 6 hours of that call, they're already in, and we didn't know. But it means we haven't seen the assessments which assess the safety of the site. We haven't seen the community safety assessments. We don't know what the policing plans are. So we're not able to reassure people. That's a major problem.
And that's what people in Crowborough want. They want reassurance. They want to understand what's going on their doorstep. So talk to me about your options, because you and, other local officials want to mount a legal challenge now, essentially, against the Home Office. So what is that? What are your options?
Well, as I say, though there's a lot of confusion about this, but we don't have our usual planning powers in this case because it's Ministry of Defence land, it's Crown land, so the government can give itself permission effectively, and they have done that. So all we could do is a judicial review, which in a sense is challenging the process. There's been some kind of mistake in it. So we have got King's Councils looking at it, seeing if they can, basically we're asking their advice and we will follow their advice. If we do have a case to stop this, we will do that. But it's not as simple as issuing a stop notice because there hasn't been a breaking of the planning rules as you might expect.
Yeah. So that is a path you're pursuing. In the meantime, migrants will continue to come to Crowborough, and we got a sense of how people feel from Amelia Harper's report just before we spoke. But give me an idea of where you think this might go. I mean, people watching us now will be well aware of what happened in Epping at migrants housed in a hotel there. And while the government say hotels are not the answer, we're going to try army barracks for now, essentially, for a lot of people, it's just shifting the problem to another town, another location. What do you fear might happen in Crowborough in the coming weeks and months?
Well, I just wanted to say, and I think this is really important, that there are hundreds of people in Crowborough who have been self-organising and getting into groups and volunteer organisations that are getting together to welcome the asylum seekers. And that's absolutely happening as well. So it's much less reported because actually, and this I think is desperately sad, those people are fearful of coming forward because they're often threatened by, people who are much more angry about the situation. So there are people, there are hundreds and hundreds of these people who are wanting to offer support. So it's not as clear-cut as that. However, of course, I agree that there's none of the problems of hotels are solved by this. If any, it's just more people in one place. And we do know, don't we, that, there've already been far-right protesters who've latched onto the protests made by local people. We know that Nick Tacconi's been there. We know there's been additional political weight put on it. And of course, we know that there's a playbook that this is where it gets more dangerous, really. And so, again, we just really appeal to the communities to stay calm and kind and compassionate. There's 27 asylum seekers there. They've probably fled some incredibly difficult situations. They've had a horrible journey to get here. Let's leave them in peace and try and get on with our lives and let the authorities do their jobs.
OK, Rachel, really good to talk to you tonight. Rachel Millward there. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you. Now, to a breaking story this evening. Sky News understands that the government is set to announce what sources have described as the largest shake-up to policing in decades. In fact, the Home Secretary is expected to announce the largest reforms to policing since the service was founded. That was 2 centuries ago. What do we know so far? Political correspondent Rob Powell is standing by. Rob?
Yeah, so this is basically the Labour government's plan for policing, which will be unveiled on Monday in a policy paper, a white paper in the Westminster jargon. And the headline of it will be what we're told will be a significant shrinking in the number of police forces that we have across England and Wales. There's 43 at the moment, and we are told that Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, wants to shrink that significantly. The advantage that they see this will bring will essentially be cutting down on back office admin resource and staff, because they will be able to share that sort of back office function between fewer forces, and that, or so the plan goes, will free up resource and funding for more frontline officers actually out and about responding to crimes and tackling crimes. alongside that, Home Office sources say that they want to create what they're calling local policing areas, essentially within these new expanded police forces that would be focused on certain rural areas, one set area, or a town or a borough in a city, and that would allow the officers and staff working in that area to be closer to the communities and the neighbourhoods that they monitor. I think that the aim of this is sort of twofold. One is to fight back against a feeling that more sort of lower down the spectrum crimes like shoplifting and phone theft, which, you know, of course, if they're happening to you, are pretty major, but are generally, I think, classified further down the seriousness spectrum, that they actually start to get more of a police response. That's one of them, by trying to put officers close to the communities that they're policing. I think the second one as well is that the government sees some police forces not being able to respond to major incidents when they happen in their patch, smaller police forces responding to homicides and things like that. By expanding police forces out, they'll be able to marshal more resources if something big really does happen. I think in terms of the drawbacks on this, well, the government this evening is only briefing that we can expect these changes by the end of the next Parliament. So you're talking 2034. So this is way off into the future. And I think you think back 2 decades, the then Tony Blair Home Secretary Charles Clarke proposed something very similar to this back then. It obviously never got off the drawing board. I think whilst you had police chiefs backing this idea of shrinking down police forces to free up resource, it might run into trouble with the policing unions, the Federation, that will likely claim that the real route to success here is just by putting more money in, more funding and investment. And then I think the final point is that sort of freeing up and cutting down back office staff to put more people on the front line is something that you frequently hear as a solution for many public service woes. It's something that's spoken about, say, in the NHS. But what you have to avoid, really, is that by cutting down on back office staff and managers, you don't force more of the frontline staff to have to pick up those kind of admin duties. So, look, we're talking about a massive piece of work here that we probably won't see the benefit of until way, way after the next election. But I think the Home Office and those around the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, see this as part of her reforming programme. They are very much presenting it in the same vein as what she's done on migration, legal and illegal, basically gripping the big thorny issues and not being afraid to make major changes.
Rob, thank you. Rob Powell with the latest on that breaking news. Still to come on the UK tonight. Liz Hurley's emotional testimony in the High Court today. Plus, Sinners makes Oscars history with 2 British actors up for awards. All the details coming up.
best thing about being a Sky News journalist.
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
You're watching the UK Tonight. Just some breaking news coming to us about Ukraine. This is their President Volodymyr Zelenskyy saying that the country has reached agreements on a new air defence package. This agreement taking place in Davos. Reuters news agency reporting that President Zelenskyy has told reporters there that they've reached agreements on a new air defence package. Details no doubt to follow throughout the course of the evening. It comes ahead of those trilateral talks at the weekend between Ukraine, Russia and the United States. To events in the High Court now, Liz Hurley giving emotional testimony today in a case against the publisher of the Daily Mail. The actor claiming private investigators working for the Daily Mail bugged her phone and placed hidden microphones on her home windows in what she described as a brutal invasion of privacy. Our royal correspondent Laura Bundock was there at court.
Well, Liz Hurley arrived at the High Court with her son Damien at her side for what would be an emotional appearance. Also in court, Prince Harry returning, we're told, to support and show solidarity. Now, Liz Hurley's claim centres around 15 articles from 2002 to 2011, all of which she claims were written using information illegally obtained. She alleges her phones were hacked and her home bugged, with one listening device placed on the windowsill of her dining room. And she says private investigators were hired to blag confidential details about her. And she said she was devastated. I had not come across, she said, this brutal invasion of privacy in either of my two battles with the other newspapers. I felt crushed. It represented, she said, the ultimate violation of privacy. Ms Hurley said at this time there were hundreds and thousands of articles being written about her and how she was often followed so much there were generally 20 or 30 men stood outside her home, jostling and surrounding her. Now, at one point, Ms Hurley was in tears looking at an article and asked for the article to be taken off her screen. And she became upset too over an alleged witness statement from a private investigator who, it's claimed, listened in on her conversations. Now, 5 of the articles in question were about her son Damien and his father Steve Bing. She says the exclusive nature of the information in the articles can only have come from private conversations, including one she talked about with David Furnish, Sir Elton John's husband. Now, Associated newspapers strongly deny any wrongdoing. They argued the source of the stories wasn't unlawful conduct, but Ms Hurley's own associates and friends. She said, though, I can't think of any of my friends that would want to be quoted in newspapers. Ms Hurley was also asked about her former partner, the actor Hugh Grant, who's taken on the tabloids and supported the Hacked Off campaign. Liz Hurley admitted that she'd given Hacked Off £350,000 when she won damages from the publishers of The Mirror. But she denied being further involved with the campaign. She said she didn't know that they were pursuing a claim against Associated newspapers. Now, when asked if Hugh Grant had spoken to her about it, she told the court, I didn't often listen to Hugh when he was talking about any of this stuff. There was an article from 2002 which came up, written after the birth of her son, Damien. She denied providing the journalist with the information and said she didn't authorise anyone else to do so. At the end of the hearing, Liz Hurley was asked about her having to give evidence today and said, I don't really want to be here, didn't want to come. I find it quite intimidating, she said, traumatic, and added it had been very painful. Now, Prince Harry left court early today to meet one of the co-claimants, Baroness Doreen Lawrence, at the House of Lords. Liz Hurley left court again, accompanied by her son Damien, and this case is due to last another 8 weeks.
As water supply problems continue to affect thousands of people across Kent and Sussex, locals have been venting their anger. They say the issue is affecting schools and putting people's health at risk. Our national correspondent Tom Parmenter went along to a town hall held in Tunbridge Wells to hear what people had to say.
Put your hand up if you're happy to drink the water that's coming out of the tap. No, nobody. Oh, one, two.
They have left us in water limbo.
Very disappointing that South East Water haven't sent a representative here to speak to the community, and that's the least that we could have done.
All they want is a reliable water supply and are exasperated that their taps keep running dry.
South East Water have repeatedly apologised, but they're not here to face you. What do you make of that?
I mean, I'm not surprised they haven't turned up. It's not just a question of investing a bit more in the infrastructure. It needs a complete overhaul. So I do think that if we can perhaps do something here and affect the first change in Kent or in Tunbridge Wells, perhaps the rest of the country can follow suit.
Before that, they want accountability.
Well, I'm David Hinton, I'm the CEO of South East Water.
All they've heard so far this year from the man in charge of their water supply was when he was obliged to give evidence to MPs. He gave his company 8 out of 10 for responding to the incidents and 6 out of 10 for communications. At this school in Tunbridge Wells, it would be 0.
This is what my job is now.
That one's...
I'll just check it's not the tap. Oh, but there is... It's a guessing game, but normally they all work, so...
It's kind of almost screwed us all over a little bit. So I'm quite worried for my exams. I don't want to be on a back foot.
Students need certainty that they can come and sit at these desks. But certainty is something that South East Water seem incapable of delivering.
They're treating us a little bit like idiots, to be honest. You know, they'll throw technical language in our faces and tell us about all the problems that are going on, but we haven't been given a single solution.
So this school has had to improvise.
There are COVID vibes around needing to adapt quickly and being resilient.
How much has this cost you so far?
I estimate it to be roughly around £20,000. If South East Water have got the audacity to not provide us that money back, they are literally taking that money from young people.
South East Water has turned down our approaches for an interview, but the calls for transparency, accountability and action are only intensifying. Nowhere more than here. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Tunbridge Wells.
And that invitation for South East Water for an interview does not expire. We'll continue to keep an eye on events in Kent and Sussex. Now, a £20,000 reward is being offered for anyone who can uncover the person responsible for a murder that happened on Merseyside 4 decades ago. 21-year-old Diane Sindel was raped and killed in Birkenhead in 1986, leading to Peter Sullivan wrongly spending 38 years in prison. His conviction was quashed just last year, thanks to advances in forensic testing. Our North of England correspondent Caterina Vitozzi has this report.
It's a brutal murder that's haunted these streets for decades. A savage attack on a young woman here in Merseyside by a killer dubbed the Beast of Birkenhead. In 1986, Diane Sindel was just 21. She'd finished working a late shift at this pub, but on her way home, she ran out of petrol. She got out of her vehicle, a blue Fiat. Then she was raped, beaten to death, her body left in an alleyway.
For decades, police thought that they had caught her killer. But last year, Peter Sullivan was released after new DNA testing of samples collected here at the scene. It is the longest-running miscarriage of justice in UK history. He'd served 38 years in prison. And now, once again, Merseyside police are on the hunt for Diane Sindel's killer.
Crime Stoppers are offering £20,000 to anyone who can provide information to them in relation to who was responsible for the murder of Diane. Back in 1986, a sample was recovered from Diane at the crime scene. Now, with the advancements working with Cellmark Forensic Services, we've identified a profile of a man from that sample. We didn't have that availability back in 1986. So, as you know, year on year, there are developments in that forensic work. So it's been key to this investigation.
The question is, after so long, is Diane Sindal's killer still alive? And does anyone know anything about what happened that night? Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News, Merseyside.
Still to come on the programme. 2 British actors nominated for Academy Awards as Sinners makes Oscars history. Right, let's bring you something sparkly and fun, shall we? Nominations for Hollywood's biggest night, the Oscars, have been unveiled today. The vampire horror, although my team is saying it's more of a thriller, they've seen it, Sinners, is leading the pack with the nomination for Best Film. It's up for a record 16 awards in total. 2 Brits among those nominated, with Wunmi Mosaku and Delroy Lindo both getting recognition for their roles in Sinners. Our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer, has all the details for you.
I ain't ever seen no demons.
Sinners is the sort of film that revels in its scares. But now Ryan Coogler's vampire horror has got audiences sitting up in their seats for a different reason. It is now the Academy's most nominated film ever, with a record-breaking 16, and among those, 2 for its British stars, Wunmi Mosaku and Delroy Lindo. Compared to Hollywood's A-listers, relative unknowns whose standout performances have proven they deserve to be seen on a world stage.
Is it true? You know everything about a person by touching them here.
While many had speculated Paul Mescal would be flying the flag for Ireland with Hamnet, somewhat appropriately for a film about Shakespeare, it wasn't to be. But his co-star Jessie Buckley remains the favourite to take home Best Actress for her moving role as a grieving mother.
They're stealing the souls of our fans?
K-pop is coming to this year's ceremony with Netflix's most watched film ever, K-pop Demon Hunters Up for 2.
Do you make money at this little table tennis thing?
Not yet.
And will this be Timothée Chalamet's year? Last year he didn't manage it, playing Bob Dylan. Can his ping-pong skills net him his first Oscar? Either way, he's made history as the youngest man to receive 3 acting nominations to date.
You know, you are so unsuitable for my daughter.
While thematically, both Sinners and One Battle After Another, with its 13 nominations, both make reference to rebelling against hierarchies, it'll be interesting to see whether tonally actors feel emboldened to speak out about what's going on in the world, or whether they'd rather let the art speak for itself. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, let's talk about it all more in a bit more depth. We can speak to Dan Wakeford, the editor-at-large at Us Weekly. Dan, really good to see you. So much to get through, but so little time, as always. Let's start with Sinners, shall we? Because I must admit, this one sort of went under the radar for me because it's described as a vampire horror, which is not my genre. So was this a bit of a shock that it got so many nominations?
It wasn't a shock, and it's not my type of film either, but it is very fun. It transcends the genre and is just a great movie. I don't think anybody expected it to break records. They did think it was going to get the most nominations, but the interesting thing here is I don't think it's going to win on the night. It may win some technical categories, but I don't think it's going to win Best Film or Best Director. Like last year, Emilia Perez, most nominations, they only won 2 nominations on the night.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's given us our 2 Brit nominees in the acting categories. Wunmi Mosaku, who hails from Manchester, and Delroy Lindo as well. America claim him as well, but he is British too. One Battle After Another, that is one of the films I've watched, because normally when the Oscar nominations come out, I sort of put them all on my list to watch, because quite a few haven't even come out here in the UK yet. But One Battle After Another, that's had a bit of Oscar buzz around it for some time.
I do think that is the leading contender for the Best Picture category and also the Best Director category for Paul Thomas Anderson. He's never won before, so this is going to be an exciting moment. And then also the Best Actor category, Leo, in my mind, this is going to be a fun, really tight race between Leo and Timothée Chalamet. And Leo, I think, will just inch out Timothée is my prediction.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Leonardo DiCaprio against Timothée Chalamet, who really is the young pretender, isn't he, to Leo's crown as king of the acting world.
Yeah, both beautiful men, but with great acting talent.
Timothée Chalamet, of course, winning that Golden Globe, youngest man ever to get 3 Oscar nods. His film, Marty Supreme, again, it's on my list. I do really want to see this one because it's got great reviews. What were your thoughts on it? Worth the watch?
It's super fun. It's one of those movies that's a little bit stressful. It's by the directors of Uncut Gems. But it's super fun, great performance. It's definitely his best performance of his career, but I don't think it's going to win. I think purely for the fact the Academy loves Leo. They go for people who have done a lot of work in the past. They're reticent to give a young person their first Oscar very quickly. They'll believe he's got a future ahead of him. I think it's 50-50, but I think Leo is going to edge him out of the way. And I'm a Chalamet fan. I am Team Chalamet, but I think he's one of the few actors in the last 10 years who's transcended into the A-list and can hold a movie on his own. Incredibly talented in the future of acting, I think he is.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. All those 3 films we talk about, stressful, fast-paced, a little bit bonkers as well, those 3. They're not very relaxing watches, but garnering a lot of interest. I'm going to talk about a couple of films that are big in my house because I have a 5-year-old daughter. One of them being Wicked, the second part of that instalment, not really getting any recognition, probably because it was so well lauded last year, and K-pop Demon Hunters, best song.
I mean, I think K-pop Demon Hunters for Best Song is fantastic. It's not that surprising to me about Wicked. I think because they split the movie into two, it confused the Academy. They don't love sequels. They never have. And I think for the first one, they're like, oh, we'll wait until the sequel. I do feel sorry for Ariana Grande not getting a nomination. I cried a little bit inside. Everyone expected this, and she didn't get it.
Hamnet, a rather disappointing disappointing turnout for the Oscars for Hamnet, but there is a Best Actress nominations. Now, I said that I was perhaps going to go and see this tomorrow afternoon before I go to a party in the evening, and someone said, oh my gosh, it is brilliant, but if you want to cry for 2 hours before you go out, you might want to have a rethink. But I love the book.
And I love a good cry, and it's beautifully shot. It's my type of movie. I loved it. And Jessie's portrayal, I think she is really a leading contender here for this actress nomination. It's going to be so tight. It's going to be between her and Rose Byrne. I love Rose Byrne. She's a genius comedic actor. And if you've seen that, another stressful movie, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. But it's going to be a very tight race between her and Rose. But I predict that Jessie would win this.
Yeah, and Rose Byrne's first Oscar nomination as well. That's going to be a tight category. Anything that surprised you in today's nominations?
Yeah, a few surprises, actually. First off, F1, the Brad Pitt movie. Fun blockbuster movie, but is that an Oscar movie? It had a lot of people's heads scratching, to be honest with you. And then Kate Hudson, I love Kate Hudson. People weren't expecting her to get an Oscar nomination. Great performance, and she's worked incredibly hard on the circuit to get nominated. So I'm excited for her, but I don't think she's a contender.
Yeah, well, there's plenty in there to think about ahead of the ceremony that takes place. Is it next month?
Yes, it is. And I do think it's going to be one of the best Oscars in years. You have got fantastic films, big glamorous stars. Some years you haven't got the big stars that you know. We all know all of these actors, and fantastic films, extremely tight races. We'll be on the edge of our seats, and there's some Brits into contention. That is always a good thing.
Oh, and Dan, we've just run out of time because I really wanted to talk to you about Harry Styles announcing his tour today. I mean, that is the big showbiz news. It's almost bigger than the Oscar nominations, isn't it?
I mean, it is. We're all super excited, ready to get online. He's playing Wembley, he's playing New York, which is good for me. And so we're extremely excited for this. It's a real great moment.
There you go. Everybody crashing the internet again, trying to get their hands on the must-have concert tickets. Dan, really good to talk to you there. Dan Wakeford, thank you. Right, still to come on the UK tonight, we're going to speak to the artist behind what have been called spooky statues. They popped up just for a couple of hours in a field in Wrexham. We'll tell you what was going on there. Plus, in sport, the FIFA president has taken a bit of a dig at British football fans.
There's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait. Right, we're going to get in. Right, get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera. Turn around and go away.
Okay, but
listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys. 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent. Sky News has been given exclusive data. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos. We gather, analyse and visualise data to tell data-driven stories.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes.
I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Middle East correspondent. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
Jess is here for a look at today's sport. But Jess, before we get into the sports bulletin, I want to talk to you about something that happened in Davos today involving this man. And yes, he can well pull that face because he took a bit of a dig at British football fans. He was talking about the World Cup, obviously the upcoming World Cup, and he referred back to Qatar and events that happened there because it was quite controversial. Let's have a little listen at what he said.
We had virtually no incidents. For the first time in history, also, no Brit was arrested during a World Cup. Imagine, this is something really, really special.
I mean, he obviously meant it as a joke, but it felt a bit harsh, didn't it?
Yeah, some might say harsh, some might say flippant, but I think what this shows us is that actually, despite the improved behaviour of British football fans in recent years, they still have this reputation of perhaps being a bit more disruptive and a bit more rowdy than supporters of other nations. We can't obviously forget the hooliganism accusations of the 80s and 90s, and it seems as though the British football fans, the English fans in particular, still have that reputation. But look, there's been no response from the home nation FAs as of yet, but there has been a bit of a pithy retort from the Football Supporters Association. They represent fans in England and Wales. They've said, while we've got Mr. Infantino's attention, we'd like to point out that rather than making cheap jokes about our fans, he should concentrate on making cheap tickets.
Yes, that's what we want, because tickets were brought up again because of the extortionate prices for fans. And Infantino, he said, you know, behind Germany, England fans are the ones that want the most tickets. And we know, of course, the England team will get out there to this World Cup in America, Canada and Mexico and follow their team. The support is always there.
It is always there for the English fans, but there have been accusations about the ticket prices being too high. We worked it out as being about £6,000 for an England fan to follow the team from the very first group game all the way to the final. That doesn't include hotels, travel and everything else on top. So England fans, Scotland fans, I'm sure will come out in their droves, but it will be an expensive trip. We'll wait to see if there's any response from the relevant FAs on that one. More of the sport coming in just a moment.
There's a reason why I've got a Premiership medal.
There was a lot of noise around Alan possibly going to Manchester United and then Newcastle.
If you're asking me would I like Alan Shearer, of course, who wouldn't like Alan Shearer?
Doesn't bother me at all it is talk.
There are only two clubs that are interested in Alan.
I spoke to Sir Alex Ferguson. The temptation to go to Man United was huge.
You name your price, you've got to be prepared to stick to it.
How much is it? Because that was a world record.
It's £15 million, making it virtually impossible for me to leave.
I think there was an inevitability that he would move at some stage.
Shout for United! I will, lads! We're breaking records. We're giving people hope again.
Be like 725 for his name and number.
I just had to come back home. It was my dream to play for Newcastle and score goals at the Gallagher.
A lot of people probably looked at us and thought we probably needed a couple of centre-halves. Not Keegan.
After all, I'm only a sheet metal worker's son from Newcastle.
If I had to make the same decision again, it would be signed for Newcastle all day long.
Now, imagine heading out for a morning walk, maybe taking your dog out for a walk and looking out across the beautiful view across the fields and finding 15 life-size human statues standing there, completely unexplained. Well, that's exactly what has happened in Wrexham, near the former Brimbo Steelworks. More than a dozen of these grey statues appearing with no reason or warning, and much to the curiosity and discomfort of locals. Many people posting on social media asking what on earth was going on, some people calling them spooky. By the time others went to take a look, they weren't there anymore. So what on earth was going on in Wrexham? Colin Spofforth is the Cheshire-based artist who can tell us this was all you're doing. What was happening?
It was an art installation. I wasn't expecting an audience. And the reaction that people gave to the artwork was amazing. Just this whole day has been taken up with the aftermath of it.
Yeah. Some people calling it spooky. They went out for a walk, they were there, said, come and have a look, come and have a look. And then they weren't there. One woman saying on Facebook, I'm not going mad, tell me you've seen it too. Why did you put them there at the steelworks?
It's part of a project called the One Man Army. And I install the sculptures into places where people no longer, abandoned places. So old factories, power stations, in this case, the steelworks. And they represent the people and the activity that was once there and is no longer. This place where the sculptures are, that you see from the air, used to be a steelworks. And the whole thing's just completely gone. So all the people who lived in the area, who worked at the plant, they just don't have any jobs. So they just represent that time and those people that once were there.
Yeah, so there's real poignancy and purpose to this art installation. You've chosen this location very carefully.
That's right.
But it was whipped out within a couple of hours. Why?
Well, it was just there for me to take some video and some film footage, the stuff that you see now on the screen. I wasn't expecting people to, well, obviously there's a road next to it, so people were passing by all day, and it got progressively busier as we were there, went into the afternoon. And some people they'd come along, they'd take some photographs of it, and then they'd go home and come back with all their family.
Yeah. And
some people thought it was going to be there permanently, so they were really excited to see it there. And then when they found out it was going, they were gutted. You know, it was nice to get that kind of reaction.
Yeah. And is this something you're going to be doing at more sites? Like you said, this is a project, not a one-off art installation exploring lost industrial and social heritage. So are you going to go to other parts of the UK?
Yes, I've already been to Fiddler's Ferry Power Station in Widnes. That's being in the process of being demolished.
Well, look, we've run out of time, but people should watch out for your artwork.